Hare Krishna, everyone. So we are going to start our evening Bhagavad Gita class. We'll begin as usual with the Mangala Charanam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai. So let's turn to our memorization verse of the week. That is Bhagavad Gita 10:8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Let's do that again. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. And we'll have a song for the translation. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Jai. All right, so now we're going to pick up where we left off. We started chapter 13, which is called, so this is reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, affectionately known as Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And yesterday we read 13, 1 and 2, so we'll pick up from text 3. Let me cite the Sanskrit together. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetragyayor jnanam yattaj jnanam matam mama. Krishna says, O sign of Bharat, that's Arjuna, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So this is Krishna. He's answering. Arjuna had, in text 1 of this chapter, he asked 6 questions, or he said he wants to know about 6 things. Prakriti, that's material nature. Purusha, the enjoyer, that's basically the Lord. And then the field, the knower of the field, knowledge, and the object of knowledge. So Krishna said that the field is this body that we live in. This is our field. And we talked about how we're like farmers in our field. The farmer has to know his field and how to use it so that he can become prosperous by using his field nicely. He can get benefit, he can make progress. So in the same way, we need to know our body, know our nature, our psychophysical nature, and know what this body is meant for. It's meant to serve Krishna. And when we serve Krishna according to our nature, then we can make spiritual progress, which is real progress for the spirit soul. So the field, the knower, and then, so in text 2, Krishna answered that the body is the field, and one who knows the body is the knower of the field. So, and then he's saying that there are two knowers of the body. So the first knower of the body is ourselves, that we know at least something about it. We don't know everything about our body. We know a few things, right? There's a lot going on inside our bodies, physical, biochemical processes that are going on that we basically don't know anything about, especially right on the cellular level. Maybe some scientists know things about how those general processes work, but how they're specifically happening in our bodies right now, we have no clue. So we know something about this body, enough to call ourselves kshetragya, knowers of the body. At least I know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. If I'm tired, if I'm hungry, I know that. But then Krishna is saying here that there is another knower in the body, and that is himself. He said, I am also the knower, not just in your body, but in all bodies. So Krishna is present in the hearts of all living beings as the Paramatma, or the super soul, and he knows the thoughts and feelings and everything about everybody, literally. And while we don't know about those cellular processes and things, Krishna does. He knows everything that's going on, even in the organelles at the microscopic level. He knows what's going on in every single body, human bodies, animals, plants, insects, birds, every body on every planet in every universe simultaneously. So that's pretty amazing. Krishna is very much the knower. In fact, he's omniscient. So that's a quality of God. He knows everything. Okay, so let's read this purport here by Srila Prabhupada. While discussing the subject of the body and the knower of the body, the soul and the supersoul, we shall find three different topics of study: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. In every field of activities, in every body, there are two souls, the individual soul and the supersoul. Because the supersoul is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Krishna says, I am also the knower. But I am not the individual knower of the body. I am the super knower. I am present in every body as the Paramatma or super soul. So we ourselves, like I am the knower of my body, but within my body, so within this body, there's me, the knower, and there's also the super knower, which is Krishna, the Lord in his Paramatma feature. Continuing with the purport. One who studies the subject matter of the field of activity and the knower of the field very minutely in terms of this Bhagavad Gita can attain to knowledge. The Lord says, I am the knower of the field of activities in every individual body. The individual may be the knower of his own body, but he is not in knowledge of other bodies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present as the Supersoul in all bodies, knows everything about all bodies. He knows all the different bodies of all the various species of life. A citizen may know everything about his patch of land, but the king knows not only his own palace, but all the properties possessed by the individual citizens. Similarly, one may be the proprietor of the body individually, but the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all bodies. The king is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizen is the secondary proprietor. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the supreme proprietor of all bodies. So, yeah, actually, this body belongs to Krishna. All of our bodies are Krishna's property, and we are just secondary proprietors. We're just taking care of Krishna's energy temporarily. But this energy is eternally his. And even after we leave these bodies, in other words, even after the time of death, this body will, either be burnt or it'll rot away in a grave, or maybe it'll be eaten by insects or animals, but it remains Krishna's energy. So Krishna's energy, Prakriti, is eternal. It's always changing, but it's always existing. So that's one of the laws of matter, that matter can never be created or destroyed. It's always existing because it's Krishna's energy and Krishna is eternal. So continuing here, the purport. The body consists of the senses. The Supreme Lord is Rishikesh, which means the controller of the senses. He is the original controller of the senses, just as the king is the original controller of all the activities of the state. The citizens are secondary controllers. The Lord says, I am also the knower. This means that he is the superknower. The individual soul knows only his particular body. Yeah, so Krishna is the supreme controller, the supreme proprietor, and we are the secondary proprietors. Same thing, Krishna is the supreme controller, and we are secondary controllers. So yeah, we can control this body. Like if I want to raise my hand, I raise my hand. If I want to open my eyes wide, I can open my eyes wide. So like that, I have some control over my body. But I can only control my body to the extent that Krishna sanctions my control, right? At any moment, I can become paralyzed and I won't be able to lift my arm. I can become paralyzed and I won't be able to open my eyes. I can become blind and I won't be able to see even if I do open my eyes. So, yeah, the ultimate controller of everything, including our bodies, is Krishna. But according to the level of empowerment that he gives us, we're able to use these bodies and we're meant to use them in his service. Okay, so now Prabhupada is quoting a verse from the Vedic literature. Kshetrani hi sharirani bijam chapi shubhashubhe tani veti sayogatma tata kshetragya uchyate. This body is called the kshetra, and within it dwells the owner of the body and the Supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the owner of the body. Therefore, he is called the knower of all fields. The distinction between the field of activities, the knower of activities, and the supreme knower of activities is described as follows. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada started off this purport saying that in this chapter, basically in this study of the world, basically, and our existence in it, there are three topics: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. So now he's talking about them in different terms. He says there are distinctions between the field of activities, the knower of activities, and the supreme knower of activities. So the field of activities is matter, the body. The knower of activities is ourselves, the living being within the material body, and the supreme knower of activities is the Lord. So it's still those three things: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. And you'll see that there's nothing in existence within the whole universe that's not one of these three things: the Lord, the living entities, and matter. So it's important to understand these things and the distinctions between these things. So continuing the purport. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the supersoul is known in terms of Vedic literature as Gyan. Yeah, so this is another question. Arjuna asked, what is knowledge? And so Krishna in the verse, he says, Kshetra gayor gyanam yat touch gyanam matamama. He says that to understand the body and the two knowers of the body, in other words, matter, the living entity, and the Lord, is real knowledge, and the differences between them. So Prabhupada is saying the same thing, that knowing the constitution of these three things is gyan, or that's the Sanskrit word for knowledge. To understand both the soul and the supersoul as one yet distinct is knowledge. So that's interesting that we and the Lord are one yet distinct. So we are one in that we are qualitatively one. We're one in quality, just like a drop of water from the ocean has the same quality as the ocean water. But in quantity, it's much, much, much smaller, right? It's a tiny little drop, whereas the ocean is vast and deep. So the Lord is spiritual, he's conscious, he's eternal, he's full of knowledge and full of bliss. And we have those same qualities. We are eternal, we are conscious living entities, and we're eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That's our spiritual nature. But so of the same quality. But Krishna, the Lord, God, is unlimited or infinite, and we are limited. We're infinitesimal, which means infinitely small. He's infinitely big, and we are infinitely small. So that's a very big difference. The difference is in quantity. So that's what we have to remember, is that we're qualitatively the same and quantitatively different. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes, one has to understand the position of Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer of nature, and Ishvara, the knower who dominates or controls nature and the individual soul. One should not confuse the three in their different capacities. One should not confuse the painter, the painting, and the easel. So, yeah, if you if you're trying to do some, if you walk into an art room and you confuse the painter, the painting, and the easel, and you start talking to the easel, you're going to look a little crazy. If you pick up a paintbrush and start painting the face of the painter, then he's going to get angry. So we can't confuse these things. We need to know the distinction between these things and their functions and their qualities, and then we can work nicely with them. So same thing, if we want to have a good life here in this material world, we need to understand the different things that are here in this material world, their distinctions and their relationship between each other. So Prabhupada says, the material world, which is the field of activities, is nature, and the enjoyer of nature is the living entity, and above them both is the supreme controller, the personality of Godhead. It is stated in the language of the Vedas, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Bhukta Bhogyam Preritaram Chamatva Sarvam Proktam Trividam Brahmam Etat. There are three Brahman conceptions. Prakriti is Brahman as the field of activities, and the Jiva, the individual soul, is also Brahman and is trying to control material nature, and the controller of both of them is also Brahman, but he is the factual controller, and that's the Lord. In this chapter, it will also be explained that out of the two knowers, one is fallible and the other is infallible. One is superior and the other is subordinate. One who understands the two knowers of the field to be one and the same contradicts the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who clearly states, I am also the knower of the field of activities. One who misunderstands a rope to be a serpent is not in knowledge. There are different kinds of bodies and there are different owners of the bodies. Because each individual soul has its individual capacity for lording it over material nature, there are different bodies. But the Supreme is also present in them as the controller. The word cha is significant for it indicates the total number of bodies. That is the opinion of Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan. Krishna is the super soul present in each and every body, apart from the individual soul. And Krishna explicitly says here that real knowledge is to know that the super soul is the controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer. There, so Prabhupada was very emphatic in that purport. He kept, for emphasis, he was repeating this point in several times in various different ways, that there's the body, which is matter, there's the soul, which is spirit, and knows something about the body, and to some extent can control the body. And there is the supreme controller, the Lord, Paramatma, who's also in every body, and who knows everything about everybody, and is the ultimate controller of everyone and everything. So those are some of the distinctions, yeah. And then, of course, the distinction between the body and the soul is that the body is material, it's temporary, it's basically dull matter, it's ignorant, it doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it's just, a lump of matter. It's inanimate. But the soul within the body is the living force in the body, which gives consciousness to the body, which is animate and, the eternal, unchangeable. The body's always changing, but the soul never changes. We learned about that in chapter 2. Okay, let's go to text 4. Tat kshetram yachcha yadrikcha yadvikari yatascha yat sachayo yat prabhavascha tat samasena me shrinu. Alia, would you like to read?
Yes. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is continued. What its changes are, whence is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influence are. The Lord is describing the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities in the constitutional positions. One has to know how this body is constituted, the materials of which this body is made, under whose control this body is working, how the changes are taking place, where from the changes are coming, what the causes are, what the reasons are, what the ultimate goal of the individual soul is, and what the actual form of the individual soul is. One should also know the distinction between the individual living soul and the super soul, their different influences, their potential, etc. One just has to understand this Bhagavad Gita directly from the description given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all this will be clarified. But one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everybody to be one with the individual soul, the Jiva. This is something like equating the potent and the impotent.
Thank you. Yeah, so there are a lot of things we need to know. It's a long list because one has to know, and then you list like 10, 12 things there that we need to know. We have to know how the body is constituted, what it is made of, who's controlling it, how it's changing, why these changes are happening, what is the cause, what is the reason, what is the goal, and what is the actual form of the soul. So that's many things that saying that we need to know. So this is knowledge. These are all the components of actual knowledge. And yeah, like in the Bible, it says, know thyself, right? We should know who we are and what our situation here is, what our situation in this world is, how we got to be in this body, and what this body's made of, what it's meant for, and where we come from, where we're going, and basically, who am I, right? So that's what this chapter is addressing, that fundamental question that every intelligent person asks, who am I? And what is my purpose? And who is God? And what is my relationship with God? Okay. And this is something that troubles a lot of people nowadays. People nowadays get really stressed out about their bodies and their identity. And many people they have confusion about their identity because they don't identify with the body, and they have a particular type of body, male, female, but they identify as some different gender, or they because nowadays it's like a global village. So somebody's born in a particular country or culture, but then they move to another country or culture, and then they're in between cultures, and their values and customs and everything are in a state of flux, and they lose a sense of identity. So yeah, all these things are very relevant, and Krishna is going to address them on a very, very, very fundamental level. He's going to get right to the core of who we are and what we're doing here. So let's go to it. Text 5. Rishi bir bahuda gitam, chando bir vividai pritak, Brahma sutra padaishchaiva, hetu madbir vinishchitai. Translation. That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as the cause and effect. So here it's interesting because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and yet he's very humbly saying that what I'm about to explain to you is all coming from the Vedas. It's from various Vedic writings, especially the Vedanta Sutra. And so he's quoting his sources. So he's showing us by his example. Of course, he doesn't need to do it, but Krishna, he understands that whatever a great person does, common people will follow. So he's teaching us by his example that whenever we're, speaking some transcendental knowledge, that we should cite our sources, right? We should make references to authorized books of knowledge, especially the Vedas. If we're talking about spiritual wisdom in the Vedic culture, then Vedic tradition, then we should specifically say that from this book, You can quote Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, different Upanishads, Puranas, like that. So it's very important so that people know that we're not just making it up. We're not just, speculating or concocting some philosophy, because anybody can say anything. And in this day and age, everybody is saying something and putting it out there on their, social media or on some blog or website or something. And so, what is real knowledge? When I was young, it was, if you read a book, you kind of trusted that that was knowledge, that people didn't write books. What you read in a textbook or, a nonfiction book on a certain topic, that was like a trusted source of knowledge. But nowadays, anybody can, just, I mean, I'm sure back in the day too, people would also write things that weren't factual. But especially nowadays, there's just so much that's opinion and speculation and that's even purposefully deceptive, just for marketing purposes or whatever. So yeah. So we need to know what are authorized sources of knowledge and cite those sources when we are professing to have knowledge ourselves, or when we're sharing that knowledge with others. Okay, so let's see what Srila Prabhupada says about this in the purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the highest authority in explaining this knowledge. Still, as a matter of course, learned scholars and standard authorities also give evidence from previous authorities. Krishna is explaining this most controversial point regarding duality and non-duality of the soul and the supersoul by referring to a scripture, the Vedanta, which is accepted as authority. First, he says, this is according to different sages. As far as the sages are concerned, besides himself, Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra, is a great sage. And in the Vedanta Sutra, duality is perfectly explained. And Vyasadeva's father, Parashara, is also a great sage, and he writes in his books of religiosity, Aham Tvam Cha Tatanye. We, you, I, and the various other living entities are all transcendental, although in material bodies. Now we are fallen into the ways of the three modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are on high levels and some are in a lower nature. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. Similarly, in the original Vedas, a distinction between the soul, the supersoul, and the body is made, especially in the Katha Upanishad. There are many great sages who have explained this, and Parashara is considered principal among them. So, yeah, Prabhupada's making the point here. I'll just pause and reading and explain something. Prabhupada's making the point here that especially when you're talking about a controversial point, then you have to cite some authoritative sources, right? Like a lawyer, when they're in court and there's a controversy between, the they call it the plaintiff and the defendant. So there's an argument. One is saying one thing, one is saying another thing. One wants one what do you call it, outcome to happen, and another wants another outcome to happen. So in order to make the point very strongly, they have to cite the law books, right? And because the law books, it's a court of law, so those are the authoritative sources of knowledge in that context. So in the same way, there's a controversy. It's actually a controversial point about who we are, right? This chapter is all about who we are. And there's a great controversy because some people think, no, I'm just a body. I am this body. I'm flesh, nothing more than that. And I was born on my birthday and I will die at some point in the future. And when I die, that's it. There's just one life and you're done. Right? This is just I'm just a combination of chemicals here. And this whole universe just came about as a combination of chemicals, and everything that we see and everything that exists is just a matter of chemical combinations. And even my thoughts and feelings can be traced down to chemicals, right? Like happiness comes from different, like dopamine and oxytocin and things that stimulate create certain reactions that we interpret in our brains as happiness. And then there are other, hormones, chemical reactions in the body that make us depressed or sad or whatever. And so they trace it all back to all down to chemicals. So thoughts, feelings, love, they're all just chemical results of chemical reactions, and ultimately meaningless. So that's one point of view. And then another point of view, of course, the Vedic point of view, what Krishna's been saying all along in the Bhagavad Gita is that no, this body is made of chemicals, but we're not these bodies. We are the soul. And the soul is the knower within the body. That's what he's saying here. And that beyond the soul, there's the super soul, who is the source of the souls and the bodies. So there are three things. And so now he's going to cite sources. But first, let's finish the purport. The word Chandobi refers to the various Vedic literatures. Oh yeah, before I get to that, there's another controversy. So even amongst people who believe that we're not these bodies, or let's say know that we're not these bodies, that we're souls, there's another controversy between people who think that myself as a soul, that I as a soul am different from the Supreme Soul, who is the Lord. And then there are other people who think that no, that I and the Super Soul, or God, are one. Basically, when I leave this body, I'm going to just merge into God and basically become one with God. So that's, that's another misunderstanding that's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than just thinking that I'm totally just a material lump of matter. So Krishna is giving us the truth here, that there's distinctions. There's matter is one thing, the soul is another thing, and the Lord, the Supreme Soul, is another tattva, another category. There's these three categories of being, and there are distinctions between them. Okay, so continuing. The word Chandobi refers to the various Vedic literatures. The Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, which is a branch of the Yajurveda, describes nature, the living entity, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So three things. As stated before, kshetra is the field of activities, and there are two kinds of kshetragya, the individual living entity and the supreme living entity. As stated in the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.9, Brahma Pucham Pratishta. There is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy known as Annamaya, dependence upon food for existence. This is a materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then in Pranamaya, after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in food, one can realize the Absolute Truth in the living symptoms or life forms. In Jnanamaya, willing and willing. Then there is Brahman realization called Vijnanamaya, in which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. The next and supreme stage is Anandamaya, realization of the all-blissful nature. Thus, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which are called Brahma Pucham. Out of these, the first 3, Annamaya, Pranamaya, and Jnanamaya, involve the fields of activities of the living entities. Transcendental to all these fields of activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamaya. The Vedanta Sutra also describes the Supreme by saying, Anandamaya Vyasat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnanamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, and Annamaya. In the field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and different from him is the Anandamaya. That means that if the living entity decides to enjoy and dovetailing himself with the Anandamaya, then he becomes perfect. This is the real picture of the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Knower of the field, the living entity as this is the real picture of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Knower of the field, the living entity as the subordinate knower, and the nature of the field of activities. One has to search for this truth in the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. It is mentioned here that the codes of the Brahma Sutra are very nicely arranged according to cause and effect. Some of the sutras or aphorisms are Naviyad Ashute, Natma Shute, and Paratu Tat Shute. The first aphorism indicates the field of activities, the second indicates the living entity, and the third indicates the Supreme Lord, summum bonum, among all manifestations of various entities. That was his long purports in this section. So, yeah, Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing the distinctions. And he's saying that we can understand these distinctions based on the level of our realization. So he's going through these 5 different stages of realization of God. And the first is that is anamaya, that we realize our dependence on food. So that's basically very primitive, right? That's like a small child, like a baby. Let's say a baby who's like, just 1 year old, then they're not even conscious of themselves as an individual person, but what they are conscious of is, I need food. So they, for them, God is food. They're searching for food, and when they get food, they're happy. So for them, the goal of life is food. And yeah, animals are similar like that. So then the next thing is pranamaya, which means prana means life, which means you realize yourself to be a living being. Yeah. Realizing life's living symptoms or life forms. So then you come to a understanding that I am alive. So a small baby, they're not thinking about life or death. They're just thinking of food. And then when they get to be a little bit older, like maybe like 4 years old or something, then they become conscious that I am alive and I can die if I'm not careful, right? If I run out into the middle of the road and get hit by a car, then I'm done, right? And so then they start becoming afraid of like dangerous things, like falling off, falling out of a tree, or a dog barking at them, or something like that. They begin to fear for their life because they realize that they are alive, a living being, and they can understand the difference between a living thing like an insect and an animal, how it's different from a stone, right, or a dead log of wood or something. So that's next stage. Then the next stage after that is, so that's pranamaya. Then is jnanamaya, means, extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. So that's, that not just I'm alive, but also there's a lot of things that I can know, right? That I am the observer within my body, and I observe my own thoughts, I observe my own feelings, I observe my own desires. Like that. So that's Jnanamaya. It's like beyond just that I'm alive to I am a conscious, thinking, feeling, and willing being. And then the next he says is Vijnanamaya, which means being able to make the distinctions between myself as a living conscious entity and the symptoms of life. Right? So I realize that I'm alive, but I also realize that my thoughts and my feelings are something, that are separate from me. My body is something separate from me. And so you start to distinguish between spirit and matter, basically, between the body and the self. Right. And that way, like I see myself growing. I can remember myself being a baby. I remember myself being a small child. I remember myself being a teenager. But myself, although my body has changed through those different age periods, but I'm still the same person. Right? So that's Vijnanamaya, that I distinguish myself from my changing body and even my changing thoughts and feelings. Okay, so then the final one, once we've distinguished between matter and spirit, then the final one is Anandamaya, that we realize that there's a supreme person, there's a supreme controller. And that's, when we become a little more advanced in knowledge, then we start to understand that behind this material world that I can see, there's an intelligent designer, right? There's a controller. And there's a difference between the supreme controller and little me, basically. So that's Anandamaya. And it's called Anandamaya because the Lord is full of Ananda. His nature is he's full of bliss. And when we connect with him through knowledge and especially through devotional service, then we can also experience that spiritual bliss. Okay. So that's a lot of quite complicated philosophical points here in this purport, but Krishna, Srila Prabhupada is making it clear. So let's go to text 6 and 7. So now so first he said, this is what you need to know. And now he's quoting the sources. He's saying that all this knowledge that I'm about to tell you is coming from various Vedic writings, especially Vedanta Sutra. So now he's actually going to tell us. Now he's actually going to tell us his brief description of the field of activity, in other words, the body. So what is this body composed of? Text 6 to 7. Mahabhut cha indriyani dashaikam cha panchachendriya gochara icha dvesha sukham dukam sangatascetanadriti etat kshetram samasena savikaram udahritam. You want to read, Bhagavad?
The five great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind. The five sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Purport: from all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns, and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the five great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the three modes of nature. Then there are five senses for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then five working senses, voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses there is the mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are the five objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the five great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms represented by consciousness and convictions are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The five great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called the materialistic conception or tamas buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the three modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhana. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with their interaction should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. The body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are six in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and at the last stage, it vanishes. Therefore, the field is a non permanent material thing. However, the Kshetragyana, the knower of the field, is its proprietor, is different.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so these are all the different things that constitute the body or our field of activities. So we have to remember that we are not the body. We are the knower, the soul within the body. So all these things that are listed here, they're just the body. So we can know, by knowing what the body is and knowing that we're not the body, then we conclude that I am not any of these things. Okay, so that's kind of liberating to know that we're not a lot of these things, because we tend to identify very strongly with a lot of these things that are listed here. So yeah, so not only am I not my senses, so the senses are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Those are the knowledge acquiring senses. So I'm none of those things. I'm also not my voice, legs, hands, anus, or genitals, the working senses. And then this body is made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. I'm none of those things. So that's a little easy to understand. But what's difficult sometimes to understand is that I'm not my mind, I'm not my intelligence, and I'm not my false ego. So even the sense that I have of who I am, I'm not that either. It's mistaken identity. And the mind means all of our thoughts and feelings. So sometimes we may know that I'm not this body, but we identify very strongly with our thoughts, with our opinions, with our philosophy of life, with our ideas, our creative ideas. We identify very strongly with our feelings, right? I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm angry, or conceptions we have about ourselves that, I'm depressed, or I'm a upbeat person, or I'm a disciplined person, or these sort of personality qualities. And we're not actually those things either. And then he continues to go on, he says desire. That even the things that I want, the things that urge me on, that drive me to do the things that I do, I'm not those things. They're just part of the body. They're just part of the body. And when I leave this body, of course, the thing is the reason we identify so much with our desires and our thoughts and feelings and opinions and, um, subtle personality traits is because when we leave this material body, I think I mentioned this yesterday. So the soul leaves the body, and the gross body that's made of the different earth, water, fire, air, ether, that body, this gross body that we can see and touch, that is done. We leave that body behind, that body rots away or gets burnt, it's done. Well, it's not done, it's recycled. It becomes transformed into something else, but it's no longer anything to do with me. And in fact, it never really was. But the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the subtle body, goes with the soul to the next body. And then we carry that subtle body with us, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So we can let go of this body. We'll get forced out of this body eventually. But it's really hard to let go of this identification with the mind and all of our thoughts and feelings and our desires and fears and things like that. But the fact that Krishna is saying is that we're not any of those things, which is good news because it means that we don't have to be controlled, right? If it's just my body, like let's say I feel hunger, so I can eat or I can choose not to eat, right? Let's say it's a fasting day. It's Ekadasi or Jamashtami, it's a fasting day. And I've decided, no, I'm going to fast until midnight for Krishna's pleasure because it's Jamashtami, it's his day of his holy appearance. So I'm going to feel hungry for sure, but I'm not going to eat because I decided to fast. So it's not that I'm hungry. We say I'm hungry, but actually just the body is hungry, right? The senses are hungry. But actually, I'm fine. I'm an eternal spirit soul. I don't even need to eat, right? The soul doesn't need food. The body needs food, and we're not the body. So we can decide whether or not the soul, as souls, we can decide whether or not we're going to act upon the body's urges and desires. We just have to stop identifying with them like that. So in the same way, different desires we don't have to act on our desires. We can just watch those desires come and go. Like Krishna said, like rivers are always flowing to the ocean, but the ocean remains still. So desires are incessantly flowing into our minds, but we can remain peaceful as long as we decide not to act on those desires. And then, yeah, hatred, happiness, distress, all these things. We don't have to act. Somebody might insult us, we might feel negatively towards it. We don't have to act on that. We can just observe it. Just observe these feelings coming and going and be peaceful despite them. So that's, like I said, very liberating. And so all these things Krishna's he's just basically giving a list, and Prabhupada is elaborating a little bit on the list, but there's so much that all the different ways that these elements and gross and subtle elements interact with each other. It's a whole study. And Prabhupada says that one who wants to know more about these 24 elements in detail, then they can study them in philosophy, and they can study them, but only a summary is given here. So also we're not going to get too deeply into these things. But yeah, I have to go give another class soon. So I'm gonna stop here. We won't go to another verse. Anyways, it's almost our time. So any questions or comments? Otherwise, we're gonna wrap it up here. And let me just see what's going on here on YouTube. Krishna. Oh, we got Jai Shri Ram and Nimisha Thakur. Hope, feeling really lost right now. Hope Krishna blesses us all. Well, I hope that he blesses you and that you find the righteous path. Seems like he's sending you in the right direction by bringing you to the Bhagavad Gita class to hear Krishna's words. So the more we hear from Krishna, the more we get clarity in our life's journey. So please keep coming and listening, and Krishna will give you knowledge. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is for, right? That in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was confused about his duty. He said, now I'm confused about my duty. I've lost all composure. He's basically saying, I don't know what to do with my life. Please tell me. Please instruct me. I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. So the Bhagavad Gita is giving, Krishna speaking to Arjuna, but he's speaking to all of us because we're all lost and confused in this world, and we all need knowledge and guidance. And so Krishna is making it very, very clear in the Bhagavad. We're supposed to be like that. So please keep coming to the Bhagavad Gita class, and hopefully by the time we finish this Bhagavad Gita, everything will be a lot more clear. All right, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.